Hi guys, and welcome to part 20 of Skyrim Mod Sanctuary. Now, as you know, if you saw last week's video, I was reviewing the RCRN mod, and I didn't quite finish it because I'd only had time to give it a cursory look, basically a couple hours looking at how the light looked. And now I've had a chance to play it, so I can give you a more informed opinion on it. And just basically, I'm very impressed indeed. The colours do look really nice. For me, it does look very realistic. There are a lot of post-process mods out there that change the colours, etc. But for me, this is the one that really hits the sweet spot for realism, and I love it. I think it looks really nice. The dungeons are dark. They don't feel quite as dark as the realistic lighting mod, and it makes it a tiny bit easier to play. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but to be honest with you, they're still dark enough to be very creepy, and they do look really nice. And just all in all, this is one of my favourite light mods now. I think it makes everything look really nice, and I even quite like the weather changes. I really did enjoy getting stuck in a snowstorm. Well, I didn't enjoy it, it was actually really hard to navigate at night time. As it should be. And just all in all, very impressed. The only downside with this mod compared to something like realistic lighting is there is a performance hit. It's not big, but it's there. But all in all, as I said, just really enjoyed the way the game looks. As you can see here, I'm looking at the sun setting, and I really like the effect. I really enjoy the way it makes things look at sunrise and sunset. And big thumbs up from me. Now, the next mod I want to talk about is the Imaginator. Now, those of you who've used the same mod in Fallout New Vegas, you'll know exactly what this is. For those of you that don't, basically it's a mod that allows you to change lots of graphical settings, the way the game looks, from tints to brightness, saturation, etc. And to make these changes, you have to summon the Imaginator helper. Those of you who use Dynavision will recognise this from there. So, let's get away from this guard. Go away. And summon the helper. And there you go. And I can now change the Imaginator settings. So, Contraster, that allows you to change brightness. So if you want the game to be brighter, there you can see, brighter by 10 steps. Another 10. And so on, and you can decrease them and reset them. There is also contrast or saturation, so if you enjoy the game to being really intense colours, you can increase the saturation. So as you can see now, the colours in the background, the tree, a lot more colourful. Let's go for, I don't know, a green tint. And as you can see, the whole game has now taken on a very slight green tint. And I can make it even greener. And you can also change it a little bit, maybe throw in a bit of magenta. They all stack on top of each other, so you can really mix a lot of different colour tints to get whichever effect it is you want, as you can see there. Yes. Now, some of the more interesting settings include the ability to change light and the sky. So if I go to Cinemagic, and I can increase the brightness of the sky. And as you can see, the sky got even brighter. I decrease it again. I can also increase sunlight. Now, I'm not totally sure how much effect this is going to have with the RCRN mod in, but it's a slight increase. Yeah, you can see a slight increase in the sunlight. You can also add bloom, low bloom. Let's go for high. High bloom. Let's turn that off. So now we've got more bloom than normal. And so on. So you can basically tweak a lot of different things. Now, one of my favourite things to change in this mod are the presets. These are presets that My Good Eye has set up for you, overall changes. So for example, you've got the nice overall enhancement, which I think makes everything look a tiny bit nicer and a tiny bit more realistic. I'm not 100% sure what it does, but they stack so you can keep applying them. And they stack on top of each other. So, for example, if you like the Magic Hour preset, that gave a slight warmth to the sky, I believe. Let's go for warm northern lights and mix them. So as you can see, everything's a bit dark now, so this might not be a perfect one. But it lets you customize the way the game looks completely. So you can change all of these presets, stack them on top of each other, maybe even come up with your own, tint it a little bit, change the contrast, change the sunlight, and get any look and any effect that you want. Brilliant. And it works really well with the RCRN mod. And so now you don't even have to wait for those amazing coloured sunrises. You can actually tweak the game so that it always has them. And it's completely up to you. Total control of how things look. One thing you should be aware of is using the cinemagic bloom effects if you are using the realistic lighting mod. That's not the RCRN, but the realistic lighting mod. If you watch what happens when I pick low bloom, as you can see, it really does make a massive change. And if you go all the way to the high bloom, it's quite ridiculous. Everything's way too white. So the bloom effects basically you should avoid if you're using realistic lighting. Everything else seems to work just fine. Sky increase, sunlight increase, but just not the bloom. Now, one of the things I've noticed while making this video is how boring Whiterun really is. I'd never really thought about it before, but it's a very bleak place when you compare it to say, Riften or Solitude. And I suppose it's supposed to be like that. I mean, it kind of matches the countryside, but after a while it just gets a little bit too sparse and monotonous. So I thought I'd try a mod that actually made it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more beautiful. Now, there are a number that do that, but one of the ones I quite liked was called Beautiful Whiterun. And basically it adds things like moss hanging from the roof, it adds plants, trees, torches, flags, and so on, to just make the place look a little busier, a little bit more full. And it really does actually make the place feel a lot more homey. You know, it's a lot more pleasant a place to live. But it also, beyond just adding items that look good, it actually adds a lot of plants that are harvestable. So you can go around and actually collect a lot of things for your alchemy. Now, you should be warned, this mod won't work with the Open Cities mod if you've been using that. I covered that in a previous video. So at least at the moment, I don't think it does. I'm hoping in a future update, perhaps there'll be compatibility patches between things like Open Cities and mods that make cities a little bit more beautiful. But for now, you're going to have to choose one or the other. But this mod is just, it's a massive transformation of this city. And yeah, I'll understand if people think that it's a little bit beyond the original developer's vision. And it probably is. But it is so much nicer now just to wander around, and you know, if you get the home here, Breeze Home, it's just, it feels a lot nicer. So this is a mod I'm really liking at the moment. Now, another mod that I covered last week was a mod that added cloaks. And it's very cool, but the cloaks were quite light and maybe not to your taste if you're a sort of great big enormous barbarian. But don't worry, there is another mod giving cloaks, and this one is definitely for the barbarian Nord out there. And those cloaks come from a mod called Winter is Coming, and basically it adds cloaks that look like they've been made out of animal skins, animal fur, so they look like bear fur. These cloaks are really large, they look really thick. They don't just look thick enough to keep you warm in minus 30 degrees temperature, they look thick enough to stop arrows. I mean, these things are pretty magnificent. They're huge, they're large, and they do look great. Now, they come in a variety of colours as well. In fact, there's a huge array of different types made with different materials, and you can either have them in-game you can find them on NPCs in leveled lists, or you can craft them yourselves. And the craftable ones, they're perfectly reasonable. They use the sort of ingredients you'd expect, bear pelts, except leather straps, etc. So everything's pretty reasonable. You don't need any special perks to be able to make them. And I believe they're enchantable, so they actually allow you to have some extra enchantments on, which is actually pretty powerful. There are also some hoods, but the hoods are a little bit smaller for me, and I sort of prefer them without the hoods at the moment. I think I'd like to see an upgrade for this mod where the hoods were, I don't know, a bit larger and a bit thicker to match the cloak. Maybe even animal heads. That would be very cool. But either way, this is a very cool mod indeed, and it adds yet more cloaks, and I think it fits the game perfectly. And the last mod I'm going to show you for this video is another one of those tiny little gems that I just love finding, and it is a mod called Lockpick Graduation, and it is fairly simple. It just adds little marks, little lockpick marks on the lock itself, so that you have got some point to gauge where your lockpick was when it broke. You could argue that this is not realistic because locks do not come with these little marks on them, but I could also argue that there's nothing to stop me using my picks to make little marks so that I know where I broke it. It's not exactly a cheat, but it does make picking locks a lot easier. And a little less frustrating. So, you know, if you enjoy these mini games and love making them hard for yourself, don't use this mod. If, like me, you hate mini games like this, but you don't want to use something that is a very obvious cheat, this is a great little mod to try. And that is just about it for this video, but before we go, I want to give a shout out to another channel I think you guys will love, and it is a channel called Sow TV. I'm not sure if I said that correctly, and I apologize if I did not. He does a load of videos. I mean, he's got loads of videos on Skyrim mods, and he brings them out at least weekly, and I think more often, and they are excellent quality. I mean, he covers loads of mods, and the production quality is phenomenal. I'm going to put a video up. You can click on that and go and check out one of his videos. Definitely well worth it. Okay, well, I hope this video was useful, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember, click the like button. I always appreciate that. The next Skyrim mod sanctuary will be out in a few days. I have already started work on it, and I hope you guys join me for that. And until then, have fun.